Gerald Thompson sat silently at his kitchen table, the morning light filtering through the sheer lace curtains, casting dappled patterns on the worn oak surface. The room was a tableau of quiet shabbiness, each corner holding echoes of the past, faded photographs of a long-ago wedding day, the fragrance of dried lavender from Amy's old herb rack, and the vast emptiness that now filled his life since her passing. He ran a roughened hand through thinning, grizzled hair as he sipped his coffee, its warmth a poor substitute for the embrace he yearned for but would never know again. Outside, Verdant Valley lay resplendent under a soft morning haze, a gentle green expanse stretching out before the Thompson farmhouse. Gerald's farm, though less bustling than in its prime, still held life in its soil, a rhythmic pulse matched only by the seasons themselves. It was spring, and with it came the perennial storm, as inevitable as the tides. Nature, in its brutal efficiency, had once again swept over his fields, retaining them like a mariner inspecting his vessel at dawn. But the storm had left behind more than just the usual debris. As dawn's first threads of light unfurled across the land, Gerald tread outside to assess the sleep-altered terrain. There was comfort in the predictability of this task: inspect, repair, resume. Yet this time, something unexpected lay in his path. Walking the perimeter of the field closest to the woods, a lesser farm plot, mostly for the wildflowers Amy adored, his boots crunched on twigs and dried leaves, the aromas of earth and rain thick around him. His eyes caught on an anomaly, nestled within the furrows of the storm-churned earth, for smooth black eggs gleamed like polished stones against the earthy backdrop. He knelt down, curiosity piqued though tinged with trepidation. These were not the eggs of any bird he was familiar with. Larger than any hen could produce, they seemed to absorb the light, their surfaces as dark and bottomless as midnight waters. Despite their oddity, Gerald felt an inexplicable pull, a magnetic draw compelling enough to breach his caution. "Never seen anything like you before," he murmured, as if the eggs could hear and respond to the reassurance he didn't quite believe himself. As he scooped each one carefully into his worn flannel shirt, binding them safely in its folds, a smile played at the edges of his lips. It was the first in months, raw and unfamiliar. The eggs brought with them a promise, one that whispered the ancient and ritualistic rhythm of life against death, newness fighting against sameness. He stood up, cradling the eggs as he walked slowly back to the house, allowing himself to hope, if just for a moment, that these peculiar vessels might hold some sliver of the connection he craved, a diversion and a balm for his aching heart. Once inside, the soft cooing from the adjacent hen coop growing louder with the morning, Gerald found an unused basket and lined it with straw, placing the eggs within with a gentleness he hadn't practiced since Oliver was a child. His son, now grown and estranged, felt worlds away, a distance defined not by geography, but by the unresolved silence between them. He placed the basket in the coop, in the spot where the sun's rays were tenderest and where warmth lingered longest. The hens, always curious, approached the new additions cautiously before settling into their usual routines, maroon feathers snug around the new centerpiece. As the days sidled by, Gerald found himself drawn more frequently to the coop, his fingers tracing the egg's smooth surfaces each morning, as if conveying some unspoken promise. The chores that filled his days, mending fences, tending crops, patching roofs battered by winter winds, slowly became intertwined with these visits, creating a new cadence to his lonely rhythm. Within the egg's quiet mystery lay an unexpected solace, a reawakening of Gerald's long-forsaken tenderness, an intuitive remembrance of fatherly care he'd buried with his losses. His isolation, though unchanged in its physical scope, began to feel less stark, edged with a delicate filigree of burgeoning hope. One late afternoon, as storm clouds gathered once more, Gerald sat beneath the old oak tree near the coop, Amy's favorite reading spot. The rush of the approaching storm whispered through the leaves, and the world felt momentarily poised on the precipice of change. He imagined what she would say, how she would encourage him to reach out to Oliver, to bridge the chasm with love as steadfast as the earth beneath. Time sidled by beneath that oak. Gerald often returned there, reflecting on how vitality often emerges unnoticed beneath a canopy of grief until the storm nudges it into sight. Perhaps these eggs, foreign and unsettled, were the catalyst he didn't know he needed, a chance not just at nurturing life, but at rekindling the bonds stretched thin across time and pain. This tiny, incremental hope became his companion, urging thoughts of reconciliation under the veneer of caregiving. And as he glanced toward a coop where the eggs sat ensconced in straw and warmth, Gerald pondered the mysteries nature deposited at his feet and prayed he would one day share them with his son, a testament to the strength of love and life's insistent will to endure. The morning light drifted lazily through the sheer lace curtains of Gerald Thompson's kitchen, casting intricate, lace-like patterns on the worn oak surface of the table, reminders of past beauty against present solitude. Sitting there, Gerald sipped his coffee, warmth spurting through him from the mug, yet failing to reach the deeper, colder parts of his being. The room was filled with ghosts of a happier time, faded wedding photos with Amy, whose laughter had once filled the space, and the gentle bouquet of dried lavender that she had so lovingly arranged, long before grief claimed his heart. Outside, Burton Valley lay spread before the Thompson farmhouse, a canvas of burgeoning green under a soft morning mist. Spring had arrived, not with its usual promise of renewal, but with a familiarity tinged with melancholy. The recent storm had left its mark, a primal reshaping of the landscape where Gerald made his life's work. Inspecting the farm's damage, a routine chore born of necessity, offered a comfort in predictability. Yet what Gerald discovered that morning promised to be anything but ordinary. As he wandered the fields, past the wildflower patch Amy had adored, his boots broke twigs and leaves with a satisfying crunch. The rain-washed air was thick with the scent of earth, a grounding aroma. Something unusual lay ahead, distinct in its peculiarity, yet so subtle it could have been missed if not for the sharpness of his eye trained, over the years, to notice what was out of line, even amid chaos. There, set against the churned earth, were the eggs. For of them, their smooth, gleaming but black surfaces contrasting sharply with the wild foliage. In that surreal moment, they appeared as something both alien and oddly fitting, a curiosity nestled within nature's whims. Gerald knelt, a frisson of curiosity running through him that he hadn't felt in years. These were no barnyard eggs, nor anything he recognized as local wildlife's work. Large and unusually dark, they seemed to absorb the faint early light, casting no reflection, and instead held a sheen that whispered of midnight dreams and untold promises. "Never seen anything like you before," he murmured under his breath, the words lingering heavy in the air as he reached out tentatively. The eggs called to a deep-seated part of him, one marred by grief yet unyielding in its innate capacity for care. This magnetic draw of the unknown stirred something dormant and primal within him, a link to his past, to nurturing Oliver, a son now as distant as the touches of spring warmth brushing against his skin. Gently, Gerald gathered them, his flannel shirt a makeshift cradle. As he lifted the last from its resting place, a smile, unbidden and raw, cracked the solemnity of his expression, a fluttering reminder of joy and wonder, emotions he'd nearly forgotten. Emboldened by this glimpse of renewal, he rose and trudged back to the farmhouse, his steps careful and deliberate, like a journey into a new beginning fraught with vulnerability and potential. Inside, accompanied by the comforting, familiar cluck of the hens, Gerald chose an unused basket to line with straw, crafting a bed for these peculiar interlopers. He felt an unmistakable shift as he placed them within, a whisper of possibility, of an uncharted path unfolding before him. "I reckon you'll thrive just fine here," Gerald spoke softly, an unintended dialogue shared with the only living beings around. In these intimate moments, his voice bridged isolation, creating a tether binding him to the world anew, like the guidance he once provided to young Oliver. Each day threaded through a pattern of responsibility and new devotion. Every morning, wrapped in a quiet ritual, Gerald would visit the coop, smoothing fingers over the egg's sleek surfaces. This daily homage pulled at the deeper recesses of longing within him, tracing the outlines of a solidarity born from shared silence and care. The tasks of farming ebbed and flowed alongside his burgeoning fascination with the eggs. Fixing broken fences, sowing the season's crops, patching up the barn hammered by winds, all were imbued with an unexpected sense of purpose. These creatures to be, though yet unseen, tugged at the unwoven threads of Gerald's heart, weaving them gently back, strand by strand. As an afternoon sun set alight with the promise of another storm, Gerald found himself drawn to the old oak tree, Amy's favorite spot for reading and dreaming, now his refuge of reflection. The tree's sturdy form silhouetted against the storm's approach, a sentinel against nature's inevitable cycle of grow and give. Beneath its boughs, he imagined Amy's gentle urgings, her spirit forever imploring him to seek reconciliation, to bridge the silent divide separating him from Oliver. She believed in connections, in love's tenacity over time and trial, and Gerald cherished those reminders, embedded in his heart like seeds waiting for the right time to sprout. Perhaps these eggs, foreign and nestled in straw, were indeed life's peculiar catalyst, a chance not just at nurturing life anew but mending what had been torn. This inkling, small yet persistent, urged thoughts of reconciliation beneath the heartfelt act of care, kindling within him embers of hope. In these quiet, restorative moments accompanied by the world's soft din, Gerald pondered not only about what the eggs might reveal, but who he might become by their presence. The unseen weight of past regrets lifted slightly, buoyed by the prospect of a future where he might share this mystery with Oliver, a testament to the resilience of love and the unyielding force of life's insistence on continuity. As the sun kissed the horizon into hues of amber and rose, Gerald's eyes were drawn once more to the coop, where the eggs lay safe, cradled in warmth and anticipation for the mystery they guarded. A profound stillness enveloped him, profound in its promise, a signal that perhaps redemption lay ahead, wrapped in nature's enigmatic embrace and the dawning possibility of reforged family bonds. The sun crested the hilltops, spilling its golden light over Verdant Valley like a painter's hand brushing vivid strokes upon a blank canvas. Gerald Thompson, now accustomed to this rhythm, moved through the morning shadows, his heart carrying the odd anticipation stemming from those unearthly black eggs nestled in his hen coop. Today, however, the tranquility in his routine was ruptured by an unfamiliar clamor. The chickens clucked frantically, their usually serene rustlings punctuated by an unfamiliar sound, a soft, persistent tapping, the very sound of life itself demanding release into the world. Throwing on his coat with almost childlike haste, Gerald crossed the dew-drenched lawn, his breath a misty vapor in the cool morning air. The moment felt charged, as though nature herself held her breath, waiting with him. Pushing open the coop door, his eyes quickly adjusted to the dim interior. His heart skipped as he saw the cause of the commotion. Tiny fissures marred the surfaces of the glossy eggs, hairline fractures spreading like veins under the taut skin. They resonated with a mysterious vitality, the pulse of emergence, and Gerald, mesmerized, knelt before them, all else forgotten. The first egg cracked loudly, its shell splitting in halves with a determined snap. There, amidst a slimy pool of glistening yolk and membranous shards, lay a creature both exotic and mesmerizing. The creature was unlike any he had ever imagined, a beguiling fusion of snake and bird, iridescent with scale-like feathers reflecting an array of colors, deep purples, vibrant blues, and streaks of silver, like night overtaking dusk on a winter's eve. Gerald's initial awe gave way to an instinctive swell of tenderness. He reached out, his hand guided by something innate, an echo of a father comforting a newborn child. The air felt charged with an unspoken bond forming from his open palm to the damp, blinking eyes of the hatchling. "You're a miracle, aren't you?" Gerald murmured, the tremor in his voice betraying the welling of emotions unchecked for years. The creature chirped softly, a myriad version of a cry, its feathered tail curling tightly around itself in trust. The remaining eggs followed suit in a cascade of tiny births, each revelatory moment piercing the solitude of the quiet coop. Midnight broke free next, his midnight plumage deepening the shadows, while shadow and twilight followed, their names given by intuition more profound than conscious choice. Once, long ago, Gerald had glimpsed that same blend of awe and delicate fear when Oliver had first entered the world, fragile, needing. But not just for care, they needed understanding, a bond woven through time shared in silent dialogue. With the hatchlings nestled in his palm, Gerald felt threads of warmth spill into the depths of his soul, those untouched by warmth since Amy's passing. He marveled at the juxtaposition, these small lives, so new, so filled with potential, yet tied irrevocably to the past, to reconciliation, not only with Oliver but with himself. Day bled into evening, each hour marked by the creature's gradual adjustment to the world outside their shells. Gerald crafted a new space beneath the skylight in his old shed, where the sun's rays could caress their fragile forms. He patted the floor with straw and old cloaks, creating a sanctuary within familiar bounds, the grove of his little farm. "What are you?" he pondered aloud, no longer unnerved by talking to these creatures. Their presence is natural now as the choreographed dance of the farm's cycle. The creatures often responded in chirps and flicks of their vibrant tails. He watched in fascination as they began to explore, stumbling in newness, attempting clumsy flights. It was an observable dance of discovery mirrored within Gerald, each flutter of wings alighting parts of his soul long rendered barren by loss and estrangement. Their survival sharpened his perception. Every hour spent ensuring their well-being cultivated a renewal of energy he hadn't known remained within him. Gerald found himself humming Amy's favorite lullabies or recounting tales he'd once spun for Oliver during the same season of renewal and life. At dusk, as clouds of indigo painted the sky, Gerald stood before the small creatures, their round eyes reflecting the fading daylight, mirrors back to him of the dreams that once dwelt securely in his heart. In them, he began to see not just mystery or beauty, but a profound kinship, a connection that became a tentative bridge leading him back to his own humanity and its interwoven tapestry of relationships. In this communion, both timeless and new, bathed in the golden light of shared silence, Gerald realized it was not merely the creatures he nurtured to thrive, but his own capacity for forgiveness, healing, and undying love. Each creature's tentative chirp reminded him of long ago, of the calls left unheeded, calls for reconciliation and open arms. Beneath the vaulted sky, amid the cacophony of life's grand orchestra, Gerald understood these creatures, emerging from their egg's confinement, symbolized his rebirth from the hardened shell of sorrow and regret, sparking hope that somewhere, amid the uncertainty of this wild, beautiful world, lay the uncharted path toward renewal, both between him and Oliver and perhaps within him. Surrendering to this burgeoning hope, Gerald, eyes lifted to the darkening heavens, allowed the tears to fall freely, tears not of sadness, but of gratitude, each droplet cradling a new promise of the enduring power of love and redemption. The sun, now a golden orb casting long stretching shadows, sank slowly beyond the verdant hills, painting the sky with hues of orange and crimson. Gerald watched the creatures, dusk, midnight, shadow, and twilight, curl into themselves, nestling closely within the makeshift sanctuary he had crafted for them. Each breath they took, synchronized and serene, breathed life and warmth into the old shed, long overlooked as merely a storage room for forgotten tools and untended memories. Their presence in his life spurred Gerald to awake each day with renewed purpose, enlivened by the simple, powerful responsibility of nurturing these fragile beings. Days turned into weeks, filled with repetitive yet meditative tasks, feeding, cleaning, watching the creatures bloom like flowers under his diligent care. The solitude he'd once dreaded now became a time of reflection, a soothing balm for his weary soul. Under the soft glow of moonlight, Gerald often found himself conversing with the beings. Their chirps and trills, an odd music that complemented his voice, hinted at an understanding of emotions and stories unspoken. Dusk, he'd call softly, as the dark-plumed creature appeared, "You remind me so much of Oliver, a little uncertain but courageous." And in those quiet evenings, shadows dancing on the beams above, he allowed tales of a more joyful past to unfurl, breathe into existence with the ease of sharing childhood legends. Amid the nurturing, Gerald's heart began to mend, whispering of locked-away memories and sentiments. He remembered Amy's laughter, a cascade of sweet notes akin to the creature's tunes, and how she had once said, "The universe always finds a way to remind us of joy, Jerry, even if it comes in unexpected forms." Her love, poured through every fiber of their beings, felt nearer, a gentle touch of wind on his cheek. One clear afternoon, as the sky wore an endless tapestry of blue and the sun scattered dapples of warmth across his land, Gerald decided to introduce the creatures to the outside world, a necessary rite of passage both for them and for him. The tethered apprehension coiled deep inside unwound as he opened the door, revealing the colorful world brimming with possibilities. "Go on, little ones," he encouraged, releasing them slowly. With tentative enthusiasm, Dusk led the charge, its wings fluttering awkwardly, a clumsy choreography mimicked by the others. They ventured into the liberty of the open lawn, their scales shimmering in the light, vivid against the green sea of grass swaying with a gentle breeze. The farm, once a domain of silence and isolation, now pulsed with life anew, each exuberant peep weaving itself into the fabric of the air. The creature's exploration grounded Gerald's heart in the present, both a symbol and a catalyst, an invisible bridge between the past he yearned to heal and the future he dared to envision. The symbiosis of reaching beyond imposed walls of self-preservation became a liberating truth, nudging him closer to a rekindled connection. It was on such a day, under an apricot sky, that Gerald heard an unexpected crunch of tires on gravel. The sound, once innocuous, now heralded significance. He turned to see Oliver, framed against the orangish glow, hesitant yet resolute as he emerged from his car. Gerald's pulse quickened with a mix of hope and anxiety. His heart whispered of the last time Oliver was home, years blurred by argument and silence. But today, something shifted within the air, resonating with unspoken promises akin to those Gerald had recently shared with his creatures. Oliver approached slowly, his eyes scanning the farm, charting changes, lingering on the small shed and its 4 inhabitants. Gerald caught the flicker of surprise in Oliver's gaze as his son registered the vibrant creatures darting through the grass, their curious eyes reflecting his own. "They're beautiful," Oliver said, voice laden with wonder, the tips of his fingers instinctively extending toward dusk, who considered him with a tilted head before gliding closer, scales catching the last drop of daylight. Gerald, standing beside this unexpected haven of renewal with his son, felt an undeniable swell of emotion. "They are," he echoed quietly, watching the cautious interaction unfold with wary optimism. Oliver, watching his dusk's iridescent feathers brushed against his palm, seemed to channel the animating magic of the moment. The simple, organic connection brought with it the nostalgia embedded in nurturing, reminiscent of Oliver's childhood spent amid these grounds, once vibrant with laughter and endless sky. "How did they come into your life?" Oliver asked, curiosity genuine, his eyes meeting Gerald's. Gerald hesitated but found himself sharing the tale, the storm, the discovery, the hatching. As he spoke, the story unfolded not just with words, but through expressions, each nuanced gesture peeling back layers long hardened by regret. The unearthly eggs had pardoned the wounds stitched into his heart, he realized, not by replacing what was lost, but by reawakening his kinship with creation and kin alike. "And I guess I've been caring for them, hoping they'd teach me something," Gerald admitted, his voice bearing the truth void of defenses they both carried. Oliver, his barriers softened by time, and the creatures at his feet, nodded slowly. "They seem to have taught you well, Dad." A compliment and a recognition, simple yet profound, bridging the gap created by years of silence. Together, they watched the creatures frolic under the canopy of the deepening sky, a cosmic tapestry slowly rolling out the stars. Unlike before, the silence between them was not an echo of the past, but a foundational block for continued conversations. Taking a deep breath, Gerald placed a firm, reassuring hand on Oliver's shoulder. "Would you like to help me care for them?" he asked, offering not just an action but a new beginning, laden with forgiveness and love. Oliver responded with a smile, a simple curve of lips that shattered old resentments like fragile shells. "I'd love that," he replied, commitment and warmth interwoven, the unspoken acceptance promising more threads to weave their shared future. In that moment, under the vast amphitheater of the stars, Gerald understood, a grace so earnestly yearned for had found its way home, manifesting unexpectedly yet perfectly. Through tending to the unseen, he had rediscovered his purpose, kindling hope for cherished familial healing, a journey wove together seamlessly by the creatures and his renewed bond with Oliver, turning each day into a celebration of resilience and love's transcending power. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the fields around Gerald's farmhouse shimmered in the dying light, shadows casting long, slender fingers over the earth. The air was crisp and clear, carrying the distant whisper of the wind through the golden stalks of barley, swaying gently in anticipation of the night. Gerald stood silently at the threshold of the small shed that had become a sanctuary for his unlikely companions. Dusk, midnight, shadow, and twilight, as they nestled themselves against the gently darkening day, their bell-like chirps harmonizing with the whisper of the nightfall breeze. This twilight time became a sacred ritual for Gerald, a period of reflection that now echoed with a murmur of memories. As he watched over the creatures, his mind swam with vivid recollections of Amy's laughter echoing across the fields, a melody softer yet as powerful as a spring wind. In their mysterious ways, the creatures encouraged him to remember the past not as a burden, but as a bridge to the future, a future he'd unwittingly begun to rebuild, one nurturing act at a time. Each evening, as the creatures' rhythmic breathing filled the shed with warmth, Gerald would speak to them, his words a balm for the silence that had long settled over his life. "You know, Shadow," his voice barely above a whisper one night, as if confiding in a close friend, "Oliver once found a frog in the riverbank. He was so proud of himself, showed it to everyone." Amy pretended to be startled, but we were both just so amused by his determination. Shadow listened, seemingly attentive, the scintillating layers of its plumage reflecting the lantern's faint glow. Sharing these stories, like unfurling wings long forgotten how to fly, allowed the tethers binding Gerald's past wounds to release their grip. Suddenly, Gerald was swept back to a summer afternoon when Oliver, barely taller than the wheat, had run through these very fields with a kind of youthful abandon only a child knows. He recalled Oliver's wide-eyed excitement at life's simplest wonders, how they both once chased clouds and dreams across this land. Those years seemed far now, a mirage intensified by the starkness of loss and silence. Yet tonight, past and present intertwined within the simple act of recall, a lifeline tossed into the abyss of years gone by. As weeks stretched into months, caring for the creatures became more than just a necessity. It was a catalyst for something deeper taking root within him. This nurturing echoed in the way Amy had once tended to their gardens, unearthed an understanding of preserving and sustaining regardless of the cost or season. Gerald's conversation with the creatures, though one-sided, was a blanket covering old wounds, each story adding another thread in the patchwork of healing. There came a day when Gerald, prompted by the brilliance of the creature's burgeoning freedom and an inexplicable tug of heart, felt an urge to share this peculiar joy. He ventured into the kitchen, a space steeped in Amy's enduring presence. Etched into her recipes was the essence of her love and warmth, a legacy left untouched by time. It was there he grasped the phone, hesitating momentarily with the weight of unsaid words and unresolved tensions. With a breath deep with resolve, he dialed. The dial tone buzzed its monotonous rhythm into the silence until finally, Oliver's voice, older than he remembered but unmistakably his son's, sounded on the other side. "Hello." Oliver, Gerald started, voice thick with unspent emotion. It me." There was a lingering pause, a vast sea bridged by memories yet traversed with caution. "Dad." The word carried both apprehension and a quiet hope that clutched at Gerald's heart. "Yes," Gerald exhaled. "I wanted to. There's something here I think you should see." The conversation unfolded fragilely, words wrapped in cautious optimism and tentative peace offerings. They shared little else that day, yet the transaction was abundant with promise. As Gerald hung up, he stared out the window at the creatures dancing like faint stars across the twilight, silent guardians nudging him toward a future echoing with redemption. A week later, Gerald found himself wandering the same dirt path in anticipation of Oliver's arrival, his heart laboring under the familiar cadence of anxiety and hope. The past had burdened them both with silence, but now it seemed to ready itself as a guide toward understanding. As Oliver's car pulled into the gravel drive, every crunch under the tires grew in intensity, each rustle sweetly earnest in its unfolding. Oliver emerged, the years reflected plainly in his features, a blend of the boy Gerald remembered and the man he'd become. They stood, two silhouettes framed against the evening's splendor, hesitant yet profoundly bound by an unyielding sense of destiny. Oliver's eyes fell upon the creatures frolicking nearby, their scales glinting under the apricot sky as the day drew itself into twilight. Their lively presence, a vibrant contrast against the gentle dusk, seemed to root Oliver's feet in place momentarily, his expression softening. "They're beautiful," he murmured, the simple words breaking the ice of years past. Gerald nodded, stepping closer. "They appeared like a gift on the land. They've helped, and well, I thought you might like to meet them." Oliver crouched, his curiosity overtaking hesitation as a sincere smile crossed his face. Dusk, leading always with a surge of curiosity, fluttered forward. Its scales echoed the fading sun's palette, merging seamlessly with the turf beneath. Oliver's fingers grazed its plumage, meeting no resistance, only acceptance. For a moment, neither spoke further. The silent dialogue passed between them, the creatures acting both as emissaries and witnesses, wove a tapestry sturdy enough to hold their mutual intent. In the lull of company, amidst the creatures and the newly carved harmony, they felt the barriers eroded by time. When Oliver met his father's gaze, it was filled with warmth and understanding, a tacit agreement to let the past be bolstered by newfound beginnings. "You know," Oliver ventured softly, "I almost didn't come. I was afraid to face things undone." His eyes mirrored the night sky, vast with their depth. "I know, son. But look," Gerald gestured gently at the creatures now clustered around. "Here we are, beginning anew, perhaps with their guidance." With the landscape cast under a kaleidoscope of stars, their conversation bloomed past midnight, each shared word fertilized by the forgiveness and healing woven into their narrative. When sleep finally called them, they answered not with darkness but with the promise of the coming dawn, lit by mutual understanding, willing to mend what had been broken with each tentative step forward. As the shadows lengthened across the field surrounding Gerald's farmhouse, the vibrant colors of the sunset gave way to a velvety twilight. The dusky sky was tinged with the remnants of a brilliant sunset that set the fields ablaze in hues of gold and purple. Gerald stood at the edge of his small yet burgeoning sanctuary, a place of solace for his feathered companions. Dusk, midnight, shadow, and twilight. Their vibrant plumage reflected the deepening night, each feather capturing the soft glow of the emerging stars, akin to jewels scattered across the heavens. Caring for the creatures had become Gerald's nightly ritual, and with each passing day, he found himself immersed in a mingling of past recollections and future hopes. The creatures, with their peculiar grace and harmony, had become not just animals in his care, but living reminders of the love that once flowed freely in his life, a love he longed to rekindle with his estranged son Oliver. The unexpected call to Oliver had been like casting a line into a vast, uncertain sea. The words momentarily tangled in his throat before spilling forth with courage Gerald hadn't realized he possessed. Reaching out wasn't easy for Gerald, whose heart had grown wary and insular following years of solitude echoed by the empty hallways of his home, a place still heavy with Amy's absence. Yet the presence of the creatures had stirred in him an inexplicable yearning to mend what had been broken, nurturing within him an urgency to extend a bridge, though it trembled precariously in the air between them. A week flitted by with torturous slowness as anticipation curled its tendrils around Gerald's days. He imagined his son's face, the familiarity of his presence in this house, and each thought both excited and terrified him. The plodding rhythm of the past began accelerating toward a crescendo of potential forgiveness and understanding. Then the day arrived when Oliver was to return, a day tinged with emotional brilliance that rivaled any sunset. Gerald spent the morning in meticulous preparation, busying himself with tasks to distract from the knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. But as the afternoon shifted to evening, reality settled in with an almost audible exhalation. Standing on the porch, Gerald watched as the sun's waning warmth painted the skies in hues of tangerine and lavender, heralding Oliver's arrival. Every gentle whisper of the breeze through the barley coaxed memories to the forefront, each one electric with the boy Oliver had been and the chasm time had carved since. Then the sound came, a car engine vibrating softly against the earth, each gravelly crunch a crescendo as Oliver's vehicle came into view. Gerald waited, arms at his sides, the weight of expectation heavy yet buoyant with hope. The car pulled to a stop, and beyond its door emerged Oliver, his silhouette growing distinct beneath the now-ebbing sky. The moment held its breath, a fragile glass sculpture poised precariously yet resoundingly alive with possibility. Oliver stood still, the breadth of the field and the magnitude of his return filling the space between them. Gerald saw him then, eyes adjusting to this novel presence. Oliver, who was part memory and part man he'd yet to fully know. They stood facing each other, generations mirrored in their stature, and eyes reflecting a shared humanity teetering on the edge of change. Gerald, despite rehearsing a script in his mind countless times, found words caught again, this time not by fear but by the lump of unspent emotion rising in his throat. "Hey, Dad," Oliver spoke first, his voice threaded with a nervous warmth that leaped across the cool evening air, instantly thawing some of the frost that had settled over Gerald's heart. "Hey," Gerald returned, a simple word rich with the complexities of their unresolved past yet brimming with the hope of what lay ahead. Oliver approached slowly, his gaze drifting to the gentle creatures now assembling as if sensing this profound moment. The creatures, bedecked in their shimmering scales, seemed to pause and turn their curious eyes toward the newcomer, just as Gerald had hoped. "They're really something, aren't they?" Oliver remarked, an understated awe coloring his voice, hinting at the boyish wonder that lay beneath his grown veneer. A connection ignited between him and the uncanny beings that had become Gerald's unlikely family. "They are," Gerald replied, stepping nearer to his son, finding his anchor in this shared glimpse of beauty. "They changed things here for me. Changed me." For a heartbeat, silence prevailed, a sacred pause allowing them to feel the whispers of the past and promises of the future binding them in a shared understanding. Then, unburdened by the silence, they spoke, low and hesitant at first, like the first birds of dawn unsure of their own song, but gradually gaining strength. Their words meandered through the twilight, touching lightly on memories cherished and regrets buried by time's passage. Dusk and midnight, unbidden ambassadors of this truce, nestled comfortably at Oliver's feet, sensing the sincerity in the human exchange. Shadow and twilight hovered gently by Gerald, shadowing the patient crescendo of forgiveness. As dusk surrendered to the deeper embrace of night, Gerald and Oliver sat beneath the dome of stars, the boundary between father and son blurring within the luminous tapestry of their rekindled bond. In the illuminated dance of celestial bodies overhead, they found a shared peace, unspoken yet eloquent, a future winking brilliantly among the stars. In those fleeting, eternal hours, words of long-standing hurt found redress and understanding. They unfolded past bitterness into laughter, relishing the shared space between them now filling with childhood stories, and unvoiced dreams returned to the fore. By night's end, sleep beckoned not as a cover of darkness but as the gentle embrace of a new dawn waiting just beyond the horizon, poised to unveil the glorious colors of beginnings previously beyond their reach. Gerald retired to his room that night, heart light and space around him filled at last not with absence, but with joyful echoes of life renewed. Tomorrow would bring whatever it might, yet for now, he rested within the comfort of unity, one forged in the eye of the impossible, made possible at last by a shared love as magnificent as the stars. The air was cool and smelled faintly of hay as Gerald stood on his porch, nervously smoothing his weathered hands over the faded denim of his overalls. The sun was beginning its languid descent beneath a horizon brushed with colors as warm and complex as his emotions. It was the kind of evening where the world felt both infinitely vast and intimately close, a magic hour when everything happened in possibilities of gold and purple. From a distance, he heard it, the low growl of an approaching engine, growing louder like an incoming wave until it crescendoed into his driveway. Gravel crunched under tires, each sound punctuating the suspense stretching between father and son. The car door opened, and for a moment, everything hung in a breathless suspension. The sun stopped in its path. Even the wind paused to witness the reunion unfolding. Oliver stepped out, taller than Gerald remembered, framed starkly by the dwindling light, a once familiar stranger on a stage now theirs alone. Years had etched a man onto the boy, Gerald recalled. The same tousled hair lay beneath a gaze softened, though edged with hesitation. They stood for an indelible beat, neither moving, absorbing this extraordinary intersection of past and present. "Hey, Dad," Oliver finally said, his voice a tether reaching back to shadowed memories and forward into an unknown future. The words seemed small yet resonated with the gravity of unspoken apologies and unopened doors. "Hey," Gerald whispered, the simple word ripe with acceptance and 1,000 hidden regrets. As if sensing the significance of the moment, dusk and midnight emerged from their sanctuary, their presence weaving an ethereal narrative between the two men. They flitted gently around Oliver, examining him with eyes as curious as his own. Their scales reflected the dying light, casting a prism of colors that bridged the gap between father and son. Oliver watched them, his face an open book that Gerard longed to read. "They're really something, aren't they?" His voice rose slightly, colored almost imperceptibly with awe and a softness that tugged insistently on Gerald's heartstrings, reminding him of Oliver's boyhood wonder. "They are," Gerald replied, stepping closer, encouraged by their shared marvel. "They showed up when I wasn't sure what I needed. But it turns out they were exactly that." Oliver nodded, understanding laced subtly into his gaze. He reached out tentatively, allowing the gentle creatures to engage with him, their shimmering feathers trembling in response to his touch. His reluctance deepened into something more secure, and Gerald felt a surge of warmth at the sight. "Do they?" Oliver began, faltering. "Do they ever leave?" Gerald considered, his gaze settling on shadow and twilight as they circled back to him, gliding through silvered air. "They haven't yet, but I think they will when they're ready." A poignant silence followed, words anxiously skating over surfaces too fragile for a direct touch. They lingered there in the sacred silence, the night expanding around them, a gentle current nudging their hearts closer. As lamplight from the house spread a golden pool across the yard, Oliver took a step forward, breaking the delicate tension between them. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, voice low but steady, infused with raw honesty. "For everything, for leaving like I did, and for not coming back when I should have." Gerald's breath caught, but he felt the tension in his shoulders dissolve. "I'm sorry too, Oliver. I should have listened better. Been there more." Together, they stood at the cusp of forgiveness, where words could only shadow the weight of what was exchanged in their hearts. In the glow of shared understanding, where even the creatures seemed to be listening, Oliver gestured towards the coop. Could I see them up close?" "Of course," Gerald replied, a smile threading through his voice. "They're odd little things, but I suppose they've grown on me." Walking together, their steps fell into a natural rhythm, footsteps marking a tentative path back into the intimacy of family. Gerald watched as Oliver knelt, drawing closer to the creatures, feeling a stirring within him, an ember of the pride he imagined a father, a better man, might feel. "Look at that," Oliver murmured, extending a hand. Dusk, the boldest among them, sidled up to him with curiosity. "He's not afraid." "They have a way of helping you see things differently," Gerald said quietly, joining his son, watching his shadow glided over to perch beside him. They knelt there, fathers and sons once lost in the divide. Slowly, they unraveled impactful silences with stories, Gerald's tales of Gracie, their collie, and Oliver's memories of summer nights spent counting stars by the creek. They wound through their shared history, repairing the fractures etched by time and distance with each word, a verbal stitching of a quilt once torn apart. As night slipped in, they sat side by side, heads tilted to the domed sky, silently witnessing the dance of constellations across the expanse. The tension between them, once taut, lay eased, enveloped in the quiet symphony of birthnight calls and midnight whispers. Oliver stretched, a yawn hinting at weariness, but split into a smile, a testament to his ease. Dad. Yeah. Oliver hesitated, then said, I missed this. I missed you. Gerald reached out, laying a hand on his son's shoulder, feeling the echoes of his own solitude. I did too. I wish I'd said it sooner. A nod passed between them, sealing the moment with understanding. A promise lay at the heart of this reunion, one that would sustain them beyond the dawning of tomorrow. Gerald rose, mindful of the home now shared afresh. Stay inside tonight? Let's have breakfast tomorrow. You can meet the hens, he offered. Oliver chuckled softly in agreement. From the stories you've told? I'd like that. Together, they walked back towards the house, leaving the world of starlit potential for another day, a tender beginning, this rebirth teetering on the cusp of possibility. Gerald felt his heart swell, each beat harmonizing with the rhythm of a world now fuller and infinitely vibrant. Nearby, the creatures shimmered softly, guardians of the dawn yet to come. As the sun slipped beneath the horizon, painting the world in hues of dusky blue and silver, the air around Gerald and Oliver seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It cradled them in a delicate embrace of potential and promise, the unsaid floating like stars above, each one a bridge they might cross or not, but both knew they must try. Gerald felt the unease that had dwelled for years in his chest begin to dissolve, an ice wall melting under Oliver's tentative gaze. The night was theirs, and it stretched on like an unbroken thread, linking them to their past and hopefully to a future yet unnamed. We've got a lot of ground to cover, Oliver said with a quiet smile, his words carrying the weight of things left out, left unsaid for too long. He leaned back, fingers brushing lightly against the dew-kissed grass, a reminder that time itself was as gentle and forgiving a listener as his father seemed willing to be now. Yeah, I guess we do, Gerald replied, his voice steady but tender, brimming with the sincerity and vulnerability he'd held back for so long. He looked at Oliver, really looked, and saw not just the man he'd become, but the boy he once knew. I'm glad you're here now. An easy silence descended, broken only by the occasional hushed rustle of feathers as dusk and midnight settled nearby, their presence a soothing balm to the fractures left by time and deterred dreams. Do you remember when we used to sit on the porch and watch the fireflies? Oliver asked suddenly, his eyes reflecting distant summers filled with golden twilights and laughter that seemed to echo in the spaces around them now. We count them like stars, dozens, hundreds. Sure do, Gerald replied with a chuckle, memories washing over him like the soft lapping of a gentle stream. You always try to catch 'em. I think you thought they'd show you something secret, something only you could see. Oliver smiled softly at the recollection, a boyish hint lightening his grown features. Maybe I hoped they'd take me somewhere else for just a little bit, he confessed, casting a glance at the ground between them, uncertain yet forthright. Gerald nodded, understanding all too well the desire to escape, to transcend a world that sometimes felt unforgiving. Their home, for all its beauty, had also borne the scars of arguments and silences, the uncharted gaps between them as they each weathered their battles alone. I should have known you needed more, Gerald admitted, his voice infused with an insight only years of reflection could bring. I thought just being here, doing the work, that'd be enough. But I see now, you needed me to be here, really be here. The confession hung in the air, acknowledgement of past missteps, an offering made under the quiet, watchful eyes of their ethereal companions. Dusk and midnight flitted about, casting kaleidoscope shadows that wove in and out of the spaces Oliver and Gerald still needed to fill. Oliver sat up, his gaze steady, meeting Gerald's with a resolve tinged with hope. I should have told you, he said. All I needed was to know I could be honest, to make mistakes, and have you help me find my way home, And I'd hoped you'd find a path back here, even if I wasn't sure how to draw it for you, Gerald replied, his eyes bright and unwavering in the growing dark. I think maybe these little guys knew before I did how much light there could be in just opening that door. A laugh bubbled up from Oliver, a sound so familiar and yet remarkably new in its release. They are quite the intermediaries, aren't they? He gestured toward the creatures who, in the fading light, seemed to share a secret smile between them. They've got a knack for bringing folks together, I'd say, Gerald remarked, reaching out tentatively. His hand brushed against the glossy feathers of midnight, whose gentle croon seemed to echo the unspoken bond forming anew between father and son. Silence unfolded once more, a gentle, companionable quiet, as if the night itself held its breath in reverence for their reunion. It was punctuated only by the subtle, lilting calls of the creatures, a symphony of hope and reconciliation. As the stars began their nightly procession across the sky, Oliver spoke again, his voice a thread tethering new possibilities to the certainty of family. "What happens now, Dad? With you, with them, with us?" "I'm not sure," Gerald said thoughtfully, feeling the weight of truth and the ease of it all at once. "But whatever it is, we don't have to face it alone. I imagine it'll unfold as naturally as these little fellows found their way to us." "That sounds like a plan," Oliver agreed, confidence growing from a fragile sprout rooted in newfound connection. He stood slowly, dusting the earth from his hands, extending one to his father. "Come on, let's go inside." Taking his son's hand, Gerald rose, a smile playing across his lips, a smile that spoke not just of relief but of renewal and a cautious yet invincible hope. They turned toward the soft, welcoming light of the house, warm and inviting as it spilled out in luminous ribbons across the lawn. The creatures trailed behind, circling gracefully, their forms a dance of light and shadow that mirrored the heart stories of those who'd cared for them. Even as the future lay uncertain before them, one thing was clear. Together, Gerald and Oliver were ready to embrace it. What had begun in the shimmering mystery of black eggs had unfurled into something remarkably beautiful, an iridescent testament to the power of broken things mended, of lost things found, and of hearts willing to open even amidst life's unforeseen challenges. As they entered the home, the embracing warmth whispered promises of dawns yet to come, of mornings filled not with solo contemplation but shared laughter and learning, of a life rebuilt upon a steady foundation of love and trust restored. Tomorrow, like the creatures curled safely in their coop, would wait. Tonight, in the fullest sense, Gerald and Oliver were truly, unerringly, and unwaveringly home. The harmonious lull of reconciliation was shattered, like glass meeting stone, by the arrival of a stark white envelope bearing the official emblem of a corporate developer. It appeared one morning as they gathered at the kitchen table, its presence as intrusive as the realization ensnared within. The land that had nurtured Gerald's lineage for generations was under threat. Gerald unfolded the letter, the bureaucratic language blurring as he skimmed it, his heart pounding with each line. The company intended to purchase the land, regardless of his willingness to sell, leveraging a clause that allowed for eminent domain. It was a cold proposition, as dismissive as an afterthought and presented under the guise of progress. The weight of the impending loss gripped Gerald, coiling around his chest and tightening with every breath. This land was an entity of its own, both cradle and fortress, bearing witness to his life's most pivotal moments. Snippets of memory played through his mind like a reel, Amy's laughter echoing through the fields, Oliver's childish gambits among the spring blooms, the wind-swept afternoons spent dreaming of futures once shimmering with possibility. Under the soft light filtering through the curtains, Gerald passed the letter to Oliver, who read its contents, his expression hardening with each word. "We can fight this," Oliver declared, his voice resolute, grounding Gerald's spiraling despair. "They can't just take everything." Gerald nodded, though a shadow of doubt flitted across his features. "They have lawyers, money, power. What do we have? Some heartbreak story of years gone by." "We have each other," Oliver insisted, his eyes fierce with determination. The conviction in his voice was unyielding, a tether anchoring them to reality. "We have the truth of this land, the lives it's nourished. That's something they'll never understand." Gerald took solace in Oliver's words, feeling the embers of resistance ignite. The fear of losing, not just the land, but this newfound connection with his son, compelled him to action. He straightened, squaring his shoulders against the unseen foe. "All right," he answered, resolve threading through his tone. "Then we fight." They set to work, a whirlwind of preparation that eclipsed their earlier musings by the firefly-lit porch. There were calls to be made, plans to be drafted, and allies to rally. As father and son, they navigated this new world of strategy and advocacy together, their efforts underscored by an unwavering commitment to protecting everything the land represented. Days blurred into each other, a cacophony of meetings with weary-eyed neighbors who rallied to their cause, lawyers who provided begrudging guidance, and journalists who sharpened their pens, eager to document a David versus Goliath narrative. The community, once disparate, united under a shared banner of heritage and belonging, driven by Gerald's tangible dedication and Oliver's newfound conviction. Through it all, the creatures, dusk, midnight, shadow, and twilight, were constant beacons of serenity and continuum. Their presence was an anchor in tumultuous seas, a reminder of nature's predominance over human artifice. They flitted through the winds, inscribing patterns of hope across the canvas of Gerald's struggles and triumphs. Amidst the turmoil, Gerald often found himself wandering the fields at night, seeking solace under the expansive starlit skies. The land spoke to him when words failed, an old friend whispering secrets known only to those who lent ear and heart. He felt Amy nearer during those moments, her laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves, an invisible hand guiding him forward. On such a night, Gerald stood overlooking the valley, the weight of uncertainty heavy upon him. The moon was a polished pearl above, its glow casting long shadows. Somewhere in the whispered rustle of the grasses, Gerald heard footsteps approach. "Dad." Oliver's voice reached him, both a question and an anchoring truth. He appeared at Gerald's side, his silhouette a testament to the strength they'd forged, not only from love but from shared struggle. "I thought you might be here," Oliver said, breaking the silence. He squinted into the night, as if seeking answers among the constellations. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" "Always has been," Gerald replied, his voice reverent, brimming with the calm that clarity imparts. "It's ours. And it always should be." "They're responding," Oliver continued, referring to the campaign they'd spearheaded. "The media, the people, they're on our side." Gerald nodded, a quiet pride swelling within his chest. "It's more than I dared hope for," he admitted softly. "But hope has a funny way of surprising us, calling out what we've held silent." Oliver placed a hand on his father's shoulder, a gesture of support and continuity. "We're doing it together. No matter what happens, don't ever forget that." "I won't," Gerald promised, a warmth suffusing his words, acknowledgement of life's tender mercies. He gazed out over the fields, each ridge and vale echoing through time, connecting past challenges to present joys. Their conversation waned, not because words were insufficient, but because the moment they shared spoke volumes in its own language, a quiet affirmation of paths reclaimed and futures reimagined. Amid the tranquil beauty, father and son stood united, bound by love and a shared mission not just to save their home, but to redefine its meaning. Beyond mere land, it was memory, heritage, and heart. And as they shared that bond, something remarkable emerged, a collective courage, unbroken and unyielding, ready to meet whatever the future held. In the ensuing days, the tide of public opinion swelled in their favor, and the developers, wary of the public eye now turned, began to retreat. Peace returned to Verdant Valley, not with a thunderous declaration, but with a silent, steady grace, transformative in its simplicity, invisible to the outsider, but acutely felt by those who belonged. The land, once on the brink of loss, now stood as a monument to resilience, a testament to the unbroken lines etched from heart to earth, from father to son, embodied by the simple beauty of black eggs, mysterious yet profoundly capable of new beginnings. The harmonious lull of reconciliation was shattered, like glass meeting stone, by the arrival of a stark white envelope bearing the official emblem of a corporate developer. It appeared one morning as they gathered at the kitchen table, its presence as intrusive as the realization ensnared within. The land that had nurtured Gerald's lineage for generations was under threat. Gerald unfolded the letter, the bureaucratic language blurring as he skimmed it, his heart pounding with each line. The company intended to purchase the land, regardless of his willingness to sell, leveraging a clause that allowed for eminent domain. It was a cold proposition, as dismissive as an afterthought and presented under the guise of progress. The weight of the impending loss gripped Gerald, coiling around his chest and tightening with every breath. This land was an entity of its own, both cradle and fortress, bearing witness to his life's most pivotal moments. Snippets of memory played through his mind like a reel, Amy's laughter echoing through the fields, Oliver's childish gambits among the spring blooms, the windswept afternoons spent dreaming of futures once shimmering with possibility. Under the soft light filtering through the curtains, Gerald passed the letter to Oliver, who read its contents, his expression hardening with each word. "We can fight this," Oliver declared, his voice resolute, grounding Gerald's spiraling despair. "They can't just take everything." Gerald nodded, though a shadow of doubt flitted across his features. "They have lawyers, money, power. What do we have? Some heartbreak story of years gone by." "We have each other," Oliver insisted, his eyes fierce with determination. The conviction in his voice was unyielding, a tether anchoring them to reality. "We have the truth of this land, the lives it's nourished. That's something they'll never understand." Gerald took solace in Oliver's words, feeling the embers of resistance ignite. The fear of losing, not just the land, but this newfound connection with his son, compelled him to action. He straightened, squaring his shoulders against the unseen foe. "All right," he answered, resolve threading through his tone. "Then we fight." They set to work, a whirlwind of preparation that eclipsed their earlier musings by the firefly-lit porch. There were calls to be made, plans to be drafted, and allies to rally. As father and son, they navigated this new world of strategy and advocacy together, their efforts underscored by an unwavering commitment to protecting everything the land represented. Days blurred into each other, a cacophony of meetings with weary-eyed neighbors who rallied to their cause, lawyers who provided begrudging guidance, and journalists who sharpened their pens, eager to document a David versus Goliath narrative. The community, once disparate, united under a shared banner of heritage and belonging, driven by Gerald's tangible dedication and Oliver's newfound conviction. Each encounter bonded them closer, Oliver's faith unshakable as he took initiative, leading campaigns and speaking at town halls with a passion that Gerald had long suppressed. Oliver's voice rang with righteousness, recalling moments spent in those fields, underscoring their plea with anecdotal heartbeats that made listeners nod and lean in. Amidst the turmoil, the creatures, dusk, midnight, shadow, and twilight, were constant beacons of serenity and continuum. Their presence was an anchor in tumultuous seas, a reminder of nature's predominance over human artifice. They flitted through the winds, inscribing patterns of hope across the canvas of Gerald's struggles and triumphs. One dusky evening, as the golden light gave way to twilight, Gerald found himself wandering the fields, seeking solace under the expansive starlit skies. The land spoke to him when words failed, an old friend whispering secrets known only to those who lent ear and heart. He felt Amy nearer during those moments, her laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves, an invisible hand guiding him forward. On such a night, Gerald stood overlooking the valley, the weight of uncertainty heavy upon him. The moon was a polished pearl above, its glow casting long shadows. Somewhere in the whispered rustle of the grasses, Gerald heard footsteps approach. "Dad." Oliver's voice reached him, both a question and an anchoring truth. He appeared at Gerald's side, his silhouette a testament to the strength they'd forged, not only from love but from shared struggle. "I thought you might be here," Oliver said, breaking the silence. He squinted into the night, as if seeking answers among the constellations. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" "Always has been," Gerald replied, his voice reverent, brimming with the calm that clarity imparts. "It's ours. And it always should be." "They're responding," Oliver continued, referring to the campaign they'd spearheaded. "The media, the people, they're on our side." Gerald nodded, a quiet pride swelling within his chest. "It's more than I dared hope for," he admitted softly. "But hope has a funny way of surprising us, calling out what we've held silent." Oliver placed a hand on his father's shoulder, a gesture of support and continuity. "We're doing it together. No matter what happens, don't ever forget that." "I won't," Gerald promised, a warmth suffusing his words, acknowledgement of life's tender mercies. He gazed out over the fields, each ridge and vale echoing through time, connecting past challenges to present joys. Their conversation waned, not because words were insufficient, but because the moment they shared spoke volumes in its own language, a quiet affirmation of paths reclaimed and futures reimagined. Amid the tranquil beauty, father and son stood united, bound by love and a shared mission not just to save their home but to redefine its meaning. Beyond mere land, it was memory, heritage, and heart. And as they shared that bond, something remarkable emerged, a collective courage, unbroken and unyielding, ready to meet whatever the future held. In the ensuing days, the tide of public opinion swelled in their favor, and the developers, wary of the public eye now turned, began to retreat. Peace returned to Verdant Valley, not with a thunderous declaration but with a silent, steady grace, transformative in its simplicity, invisible to the outsider but acutely felt by those who belonged. The land, once on the brink of loss, now stood as a monument to resilience, a testament to the unbroken lines etched from heart to earth, from father to son, embodied by the simple beauty of black eggs, mysterious yet profoundly capable of new beginnings. Despite the shadows cast by the developer's presence, the night's tranquility was a gentle balm, soothing as it was exhilarating. Gerald gazed out over his land, the contours of which were etched into his soul, every ridge and furrow a story he could tell by heart. The moon hung low and luminous in the sky above, bathing the fields in a silvery sheen, a beacon of quiet hope. This place had been his refuge, a living tapestry woven with the threads of his family's narrative, one embroidered by laughter and toil, love and loss. In its vast silence, he found echoes of his wife Amy's presence, and their son's youthful exuberance. On this land, dreams were planted and nurtured, and now, standing with Oliver once more by his side, new dreams took root. The land was threatened, a fact unyielding and hard as granite. Yet that bond between them, cemented through shared struggle and newfound understanding, turned the bitterness of those threats into a galvanizing force. It forged them into advocates of their heritage, defenders of a legacy, protectors of something transcendent beyond mere ownership, a lifeline connecting past, present, and future. As the campaign gained momentum, the community rallied with a transformative tenacity. Small townsfolk, who once nodded in polite interchange but little more, became allies and fervent supporters. The family's plight became a rallying cry for justice, a stand against encroaching modernity that threatened to erase stories like theirs, written in quiet corners of the world. Oliver took to the forefront, his passion igniting the spaces Gerald had kept closed for too long. His son, now the man he had once feared he had lost, spoke with an authority that belied his years, rekindling Gerald's spirit time and again. In town halls and public forums, Oliver's voice was a clarion call. He reached deep, invoking the land's stories, painting its value not in terms of acres but in lifetimes and legacies. Each word spoken was not just an argument but a testament to Gerald's history and the values Amy had instilled in them both: compassion, resilience, and a profound respect for the world around them. Inspired by Oliver's resolve, others began sharing their stories, weaving a tapestry of collective memory and hope. These narratives, intricate and intimate, mirrored the creature's existence, a fanciful yet poignant symbol of nature's whim and humanity's resilience. As public awareness swelled, the developers found themselves ensnared. They watched as signatures on petitions swelled to thousands, buoyed by an impassioned media campaign that shone a light on the very heart of the conflict. What initially appeared to be a straightforward acquisition transformed into a symbol of broader resistance, small communities standing tall against the faceless march of so-called progress. One bright morning, another envelope arrived, this one containing a stark reversal. The developers, unable to withstand the scrutiny and fervor, withdrew their claim. It was a victory quiet yet enormous, achieved not through might but through collective heart, through the binding threads of connection between individuals and the land they cherished. For Gerald, the moment was like the first stirring of spring after a long winter, full of promise and rebirth. He stood in the field with Oliver, their gaze sweeping across the land now secured for future generations. They savored the moment, their silence a shared expression of gratitude too profound for words. "Feels like coming home, doesn't it?" Oliver's voice broke the silence, rich with emotion and the realization that, amidst all the battles fought, this reunion, this renewal, felt as much a victory as saving the land itself. Gerald nodded, the weight of many burdens easing. "It does. More than I ever imagined. We've safeguarded it, not just the land, but what it means for us all." He let his words hang in the air, feeling their truth settle like the earth beneath his feet. The creatures flitted overhead, dusk, midnight, shadow, and twilight, drawing ornate patterns against the azure canvas of sky. Their continued mysteries seemed no longer an anomaly, but a sign of the miraculous intersections of life. They were part of this narrative, woven into its very fabric, just as Oliver had become part of Gerald's once fractured heart. Oliver watched them soar with a grin, an echo of the boy chasing butterflies under the summer sun. "They're amazing, aren't they? Much like this place, hard to fully understand but beautiful, nonetheless." "Yes," Gerald agreed, his voice carrying the joy that only hard-won triumph could bring. "Much like life itself, don't you think? Unexpected, but beautiful." Father and son shared a look, a world of unsaid words passing in that gaze, a silent understanding, a promise kept, a bond reforged. Every sunrise, every moment of struggle, every laugh shared, reminded them of the resilience pulsing through Verdant Valley and themselves. In the days that followed, tranquility returned in earnest. The land, saved from the brink of loss, served now as a testament to the unwavering spirit of those who fought to protect it, embodying a legacy of hope and fortitude, a place not just for Gerald and Oliver, but an inheritance of heart and history for generations yet to come. Gerald stood with Oliver, the breeze stirring contentedly around them, carrying forward scraps of stories yet to unfold. And as their shadows stretched long across the fields, there was a shared understanding that beneath this sky, on this land made sacred by time and love, they had saved more than geography. They had reclaimed a legacy of resilience, ensuring that in their hearts, it would burn bright for all time. As dawn broke over the horizon, the sky unfurled in hues of purple and gold, painting a masterpiece only nature could conjure. Gerald Thompson stood at the threshold of his land, the breeze carrying the scent of earth and promise. For him, Verdant Valley had always been a stronghold, constant amidst life's unpredictability. But today, as the land lay safe beneath the canvas of morning light, it represented so much more, a beacon of renewal, a testament to resilience, and a bridge to a cherished future. Beside him, Oliver mirrored his gaze, both men allowing the stillness of victory to seep into their bones. After years of estrangement and emotional distance, this moment felt like a homecoming. It was as though the very soil beneath them whispered of healing and reconciliation, of love that persisted despite years and misunderstandings. Gerald turned to his son, seeing not only the man who had become an unexpected ally, but the boy who once filled these fields with laughter. "Feels like coming home, doesn't it?" Oliver broke the silence, his voice rich with the weight of their shared history and recent triumph. Gerald nodded, reflecting on their journey. "It does. More than I ever imagined. We've safeguarded it, not just the land, but what it means for us all." His voice trailed off as he glanced across his fields, now secured for future generations. The black-feathered creatures soared above them. Dusk, midnight, shadow, and twilight, streaks of iridescent wonder against the azure sky. Their presence, once shrouded in mystery, now felt like an integral part of this place, an undeniable piece of the landscape's renewed spirit. "They're amazing, aren't they?" Oliver's eyes were wide with wonder, an echo of his childlike delight, the one that had always sought adventure in the natural world around him. Much like this place, undefinable yet beautiful nonetheless. Gerald chuckled softly, his heart warmed by the sight of Oliver's restoration to joy. "Yes, much like life itself. Unexpected, yet beautiful." His words carry the gravity of wisdom only hard-won through trials, victories, and losses. As they stood there, enveloped in the serenity of their reclaimed land, Gerald felt the myriad of emotions coursing through him, the relief of safeguarding his family's legacy, the satisfaction of reconnecting with his son, and the profound joy of knowing they had done it together. It was a celebration not only of land saved, but of wounds healed and bonds restored. In those tender moments, the memory of Amy surfaced, her laughter, her wisdom, her unwavering faith in the land and its power to unite and heal. He imagined her standing alongside him, her arm threaded through his, her eyes bright with pride. It was as if her spirit had been orchestrating this all along, gently guiding them back to one another and to the land that had birthed so much in their lives. "I think she would have loved to see this," Oliver said, as if reading Gerald's thoughts. "Mom always knew how to find beauty and strength in the simplest things." Gerald smiled, a wistful acknowledgement of the truth in Oliver's words. Amy's influence had always been a grounding force, and now it felt like her legacy was woven into every blade of grass, every gentle breeze that swept across the fields. "Yes, she would have," Gerald replied, his voice steady yet infused with quiet longing. The morning unfolded around them, slow and enchanting, as if the earth and sky conspired to prolong this newfound peace. Birds called to one another in symphonic harmony, the world moving to a rhythm that resonated deep within the heart of Verdant Valley. It was a melody that rippled through Gerald, his spirit singing back with gratitude and hope. As the sun climbed higher, bathing them in warmth, Oliver took a step forward, leaning on the rustic gate that had stood here as long as either could remember. "You know, Dad, I think this is only the beginning," he ventured. "A chance to turn this land into something even more. Maybe open the farm, let others experience its magic, teach them about its history, and maybe even inspire them like it's done for us." Gerald nodded thoughtfully, considering the possibilities. The notion of sharing Verdant Valley's gifts with others had always been a whisper in his thoughts, but now, with Oliver by his side, it felt like more than a mere dream. It became a practical, tangible path forward, a way to honor his wife's spirit and their shared successes. "That's not a bad idea, son. We could start small, maybe a few workshops, storytelling sessions, even let folks see those creatures." Gerald smiled, gesturing to the skies where the creatures played like ethereal dancers on a grand stage. Oliver's face lit up with enthusiasm, and Gerald realized how much he had missed this about him, his boundless energy and optimism. "I think it'll remind people of what's important, connections we share, and the stories that make us who we are." Together, father and son mapped their dreams against the horizon, envisioning a future where the land served as a living tapestry of community, education, and renewal. Each idea they discussed seemed to weave another thread through the fabric of their relationship, mending the rifts of time and distance. They stood there in companionable silence, absorbing the transformation that had occurred not only within the land but between them. Two souls who had found their way back to one another, to the heart of what truly mattered. And as the light of the new dawn bathed them in abundant promises, Gerald knew they had reclaimed something far greater than land. They had forged a legacy emboldened by resilience, enriched by love, and eternalized by the tinted memories of a life well lived. In the end, it was a story Gerald knew he could now tell not just by heart, but with it, an inheritance of family and fortitude, forever anchored within the soul of Verdant Valley.